Yeah, it's been a long weekend. So, like Joseph said, I do mostly photography and design. I'm from Brownsville, Pennsylvania. Yeah, really? Seriously? Okay, cool. I didn't think anyone knew where that was. If you don't know where that is, just pretend I said Pittsburgh, like it's close enough. I just lie and tell people that's where I'm from. So, sorry, we missed a slide. We're going back. So, like, round of applause, I guess. How many, like, punk rock kids do I have in the audience? Yeah? Closer to this? I'm sorry. Sorry, guys, I'm really short, so we're just gonna, yeah. All right. Yeah, you earned your not bad Obama slide, so good job, guys. I like that. It's cool if you're not, though. The kind of the point of me doing this talk for you is that I spent my entire youth in dingy basements and VFW halls, listening to, like, kind of okay-ish three-chord punk bands so that you guys didn't have to. So you're welcome. I'm gonna share that with everybody. See, this is, usually I have people tell me that I talk too much and that I talk too loud, so having like microphones closer to me is a foreign sort of concept, so I'm sorry. Yeah, so despite what some of my family and high school teachers maybe thought, I actually learned a lot of really useful and valuable information from going to punk shows, so a surprising amount from our do-it-yourself kind of punk scene. Probably the biggest thing, like the too long didn't read of my talk here, if you guys are gonna like wander off and get lunch or something, is it's an attitude that they have that I have kind of internalized, and it's a different kind of perspective on how the world works. You learn how to get things done quickly is important. You learn how to connect to people, like, and how to be creative in a lot of ways, not just in the thing that you're actually making, but in getting that thing out there for other people to see it. And so a lot of people, it seems like whenever they hit some kind of obstacle in their plan, it's, you know, like, what are we going to do now? I guess we can't do that. And it seems like entrepreneurs and punk kids apparently don't jump straight to no. In fact, they're like moving heaven and earth to not get to no. They're all about yes. So, like, when I started, I didn't even really think of it as starting a business exactly. It was just kind of something that, like, I had some skill at it, and I had, you know, gear and equipment and things, and so, you know, let's do this, why not? My friends, like, I had friends that if they wanted to be in a band, then they started a band. If they wanted to tour, they went. If no one will publish your zine, of course they won't, but, like, you can go to Kinko's and make a bunch of them, and then now you're an author and a publisher, so, you know, look at you. You're doing okay. So, yeah, they kind of, you know, did what they had to make things happen, and it's not looking at all the reasons we can't do something, it's what do I have to do to get this done. So Operation Ivy, I'm a big fan of. Yeah, okay, there we go. I like you guys. So they wanted to tour, but they didn't have a van, and like that's a fairly large obstacle to touring. I mean, you have to get there somehow. So they looked at what do we have, and the answer to that was like a '69 Newport or something. It's a 4-door car. And if you're sitting there thinking, like, oh, whatever, it's a vehicle, you have never been on tour, because it's bad in a 4-door car. The thing is, like, try and remember back to high school or college when, like, you'd go on a road trip and you're broke as hell, so you just pack people in, like, a clown car. And by the time you get to where you're going, you're just, like, sweaty and stiff, and you hate every single human being in that car. So that, but for 6 weeks. And also you have to play shows every night. But they did it. I mean, it would have been really easy for them, and no one would have blamed them for just saying, you know, like, we don't have a van, we can't go. But they didn't. They went out and they did the whole 6 weeks in their little 4-door car, and they made it happen. World's Scariest Police Chases. Come on, somebody. Yeah, there we go. These guys played here last year. I love them dearly, and they toured with almost no gear at all. They had more members in their band than Wu-Tang, so like once they fit all the people in the van, there wasn't room for like PAs and amps and, you know, those sort of non-essentials. So they kind of, you don't need those. They relied on people, like friends that they have in bands in other towns to hook them up. And, you know, you build a network and you make that happen. And so, again, they could have just stayed home and said, like, you know, guys, we don't have the stuff to do this. We need a trailer or van or whatever. But they didn't. They found a workaround, and they did it anyway. And the thing is that there are always someone that has it rougher than you that is doing it anyway. And there are people that are so much more hardcore than me in this regard, but you get my story because I'm the one with the microphone in the room, so. Sorry. I have Lyme disease, which is not contagious, front row people. There's no need to scoot back. It's not a big deal. But it's ranged anywhere from like fairly debilitating to kind of a bummer. And I'm sort of toward like the kind of a bummer end of it now. I'm doing pretty well, so it's not so bad. But last year, I was on IV meds, for WMC Fest actually. And so what they have to do when you're on that is they give you what's called a PICC line, and it's a little tube that they stick in your arm, and it feeds up an artery and just shoots medicine at your heart, like straight into it. And all the warnings they give you for this thing end with "and die." They're like, you could get, you know, if you get an infection, you can get sepsis and die. Like, you can get an embolism and die. They're real downers about it. Right? I have things to do, medical staff. So, you know, they get these really scary warnings. And the thing is, I had to get this thing put in. I've had like 5 of these now over the past couple years. So I'm kind of a pro at it. It's not that big of a deal. But I had to get it put in 4 days before WMC Fest last year. Which I didn't tell, like, Jeff or Joseph, anyone that was happening at the time. Like, they didn't know. I figured I had it under control. So, like, but I already told them that I would volunteer, that I was going to organize photo people, so I'm not going to, like, not do that. That was not an option to me. So I went straight, skipped over to, like, what do I have to do to get this done? And so, you know, one of the things, I have to keep this stuff cool, like in the fridge. So this is, by the way, all of my pictures of it are really scary and medical looking, so I just got this. It kind of looks like this. But they wouldn't let me put coffee in it, which was really a disappointment. If I can't mainline espresso, why do I even have this thing, right? So I got this cooler, and I filled it with, like, drugs and snacks, like legal drugs and snacks. And I drove out to Cleveland, and I, you know, found where the ice machine was where I was staying. And so I'd shoot all day here, and then I'd drive like half an hour to the Mo 6 in Middleburg. Anybody staying there? All right, guys, whatever. I'm the only idiot driving half an hour out of town, apparently, for this. So I drive out there, and I'd have to, like, hang this little bag off of a floor lamp or something and, like, sit for an hour while it ran. Except that one of the days here last year ran really late, so I had to do this, like, in the basement of Saigon Plaza, which is only, like, the 3rd weirdest place that I've done one of these. It's not, it's not a big deal. So after WMC Fest, I shot 2 more festivals that year. I did a bunch of weddings, other stuff. But on the way down to InSub Fest, I had lunch with my dad. And he said, and I showed him this because I had to do the same thing, and I got him Coke out of it or whatever. And he said, you know, most people in your situation just wouldn't work. But he didn't say it in that, like, dad kind of this is a bad idea way. He said it more of like a this kind of tone. My kid's a badass, so. My parents are very supportive of my shenanigans, and I thank them for that, so I appreciate it. But yeah, you can substitute your situation for, like, tons of things that apply more to you. Like, most people with kids wouldn't freelance. Most people with a perfectly good day job wouldn't start a business. Most people wouldn't sell their cars to get an album pressed. Most people wouldn't. And the thing is, a lot of people will say that they can't, which I'm kind of calling bullshit on. There's a cost to everything that you do, and maybe it's your money, maybe it's your time, maybe it's your parents constantly asking when you're going to get a real job and telling all their friends you're in computers. Like, maybe. But there's a cost to whatever you do, and you have to know what your plan's going to cost you because you're the one that has to commit to that. Like, you're the one that's going to have to get in a 4-door car and tour around the country. You're the one that's going to have to work from home and hustle for clients. Like, that's on you. So the thing is, you may find out when you look at what it costs to do something that maybe you don't want it that bad. And that's fine. You're allowed to decide that you don't want it as bad as what it's going to cost you. But don't, like, tell me that you can't, because I'm not buying it. There's nothing stopping you from doing things except that opportunity cost. I hear a lot of people like, you know, oh, I'd love to do posters or I'd love to do t-shirts or whatever, and I've said it too, so I'm not, you know, I'm just as bad. But the thing is that, like, you have this idea in your head that if a client doesn't hire you to do a thing, then you can't, which is silly. So Winston Smith used to do these posters for bands that don't exist. Like, you know how you'll say some stupid phrase and your friend's like, that'd be a good idea for a band name. So he would use those, and he'd make these flyers, and, like, they'd just say Friday and no other date, and they'd have, like, an address that didn't exist anywhere. And he put these up around town, like, that was his advertising. Just people would see it, and his name's on. They're like, oh, this guy does cool flyers, and they don't know they're not real bands. The Dipshits is a great name for a band. Like, that should be, there probably is somewhere by now, a band. If you want to draw posters, nobody is stopping you. They can't stop you. You're allowed to, there's nothing illegal about drawing posters and hanging them up. I'm sorry, I have elaborate notes. I feel a little bit dorky for this, but if I go over time, Joseph's gonna like gong me or something, so I'm very attentive to that. So I learned how very, very important it is to build a network from punk scene. It's a huge deal for touring bands. I mean, you have to have people, you know? You can't do it by yourself. People bail you out, they give you a place to stay, they give you a show to play on, like you need to have a network. And it's other bands, it's photographers and designers to help them with publicity, people that let you crash on their floor, like whatever it is that kind of keeps you going. And so this, you know, networking. So, you know, maybe you're like putting a touring band on your bill and, oh, hey, like I have a friend that's a promoter in Montana and I don't know, I guess you could, like for some reason you want to tour in Montana, I don't know why. I'm sure there's people there in addition to cows. And, you know, so then, okay, well, we're out in Montana and they hook you up and put you on a show and hey, we have friends and they're gonna be in your area and, you know, can they kind of like stay with you? And as Henry Rollins put it, the next thing you know, some guy named Joey Shithead's sleeping on your floor. But that's how I learned to network. Like, you find your people and you take care of each other. Like, they, you know, people have your back. There was an annual booklet that Maximum Rock and Roll put out. It's called Book Your Own Fucking Life. And I told my mom I'd keep the F-bomb count down, but it's the name of the book, so it's not my fault. Mom, sorry. So Book Your Own Fucking Life was this little, like I said, it's a little booklet that, like, I'd have to stuff $4 in the mail and send it like a caveman through snail mail. And it was like a cheat sheet to touring before emailing was really a thing and like venues didn't have websites and dinosaurs roamed the earth, I guess, I don't. And they had promoters, they had other bands, they had places that would let you play. There were a lot of times just some kid's basement, but you know, whatever, it's a place to play. And they're all broken down by regions so you could like plan it out. And the thing is, the reason that it worked is that people shared the connections that they were making. So, you know, oh, we were just through Indiana, that place closed, like there's a new place in Ohio, that band broke up, whatever. They would kind of report back, and people were contributing to that resource to help make it better because other people had done that for them. Joseph dropped my notes, and so I blame him for this. So networking's important because pretty much every good thing that's happened to me has been because of relationships with people. Like that's all networking really is. It's not, here's a business card, my elevator pitch. It's just, you know, you get to know people when you work with them. And being nice is an amazing force to getting things done. But being interested is too. Like a lot of my professional relationships sprung out of me getting in touch with someone just to tell them that I think what they're doing is really, really cool. And, you know, so like I'd get in touch with a band because I think they're doing great music or whatever. So maybe I take pictures of those guys and then they have a friend and they're in a band or they run a label or whatever. And, you know, I'm supporting my scene. I go to shows, I buy their merch, whatever. Like I just kind of got to be the person they know that does photos. Oh, it's just Caroline, she's our photographer friend. Like, you know, you're around. And so that's how I got a lot of like the professional relationships that I built. And it's also a great way, like I get in touch with photographers and designers the same way, like, hey, I think what you're doing is great, this is awesome, let's be internet friends or whatever. And so now, like I'm a great referral system for them because if they come to me with like, they want to do a shoot or design a thing or whatever, and it's not something that I really do, but I know somebody that's great at that and I can totally hook you guys up. So you're kind of like helping. I'm a like rising tide raises all ships kind of lady, so I'm not super competitive with other photographers in my area. If I know that they're really good at something that someone asked me to do, I will like bump them that work. So, and the thing is, you build a community that way. And this is your community right here, and you should care enough to make it better. You know, you call people out when they deserve it. You promote people when they deserve that. It's why I got involved in WMC Fest. I know Joseph's goal was to make people ugly cry before they got up on stage with his nice words, so I'm going to try and make the WMC crew ugly cry on this one. But yeah, it's why I got involved with WMC Fest. They care about what they're doing. They care about their industry, about the people they get to represent it, about the message that they're sending. Like, if you think Go Media is doing this to make some cash, you have not seen their budget sheets for this. They are not Scrooge McDucking it around in pools of money when y'all go home. That's not a thing that's happening. So, you know, when you're sincere about something, when you care about something and you put your heart into it, like great things come out of it. And I know that sounds like, I get it. But it's true. It's really, like when you really care about something, you work really hard at it, like amazing, wonderful things come out of it. And also rainbows, I guess, probably. So I started volunteering with WMC Fest the second year they did it, and I just asked Jeff, like, hey, you know, this is kind of in my skill set, I can do photos, do you need photos? I think this is a great thing you're doing, I want to help out. And they were really happy to have the help, so I did. And then the second year that I came out for WMC Fest 3, I volunteered again, but they said, you know, the festival's really expanding, we want to get some more like coverage, can you kind of organize like a squadron, I'm calling them, of photo volunteers? Yeah, absolutely, man. So I organized last year. And then this year, I'm volunteering. You may have seen me shooting around. I'm organizing the photo volunteers, and I'm also speaking at this because I think they're just trying to see how much I can do in one weekend. We're getting to the limit, guys. I don't know how much more I can have time for. But I've had like amazing experiences just based on wanting to volunteer and wanting to be involved. And as much as they're like very happy, like, oh, thanks for coming out and helping it, like I'm grateful for the stuff that I've got to do because of that, including getting up here and talking to you people has just been a result of wanting to be helpful. So that worked out pretty well for me. And the thing is, it's not just like your local people. I mean, we have people here that are not from Cleveland. I'm not from Cleveland. And it's a global community. Like, you have people all over the world that care about the same things as you do, that, you know, maybe have the same kind of defects that you do, that kind of thing. So you can find people that are like you everywhere. And you can use whatever it is that your skill set is. I know, you know, this is a lot of creative people, but we get people that aren't designers, that aren't music people, that are in all kinds of fields. You can use the skills that you have to make your community better. You know, bands put on benefit shows, like designers do pro bono work for causes that they believe in. Jello from the Dead Kennedys ran for mayor. That's a real thing that happened. A guy that fronts a punk band went and ran for mayor. He didn't win, but that's, you know, that's in his skill set. Like, he wanted to improve his community, and that's what he went with. You use what you know. And when people are doing something that's good, that you feel is important, support that. Like, you have some responsibility, I feel, to your community to consider the impact that your employees, that your client choices, that your projects have. And, you know, hanging around with punk kids taught me to stand for something. There's been a lot of talk about how people are kind of squirmy about networking. That's like a icky sort of thing. People get a little weird about promoting, too. And bands are fantastic at this, because when bands have a show, they will not shut the hell up about it. Like, don't even act like you didn't know that we were having a show, because we've mentioned it 4 times in the past week. Like, there's no way you didn't know about this. So why, you know, when you make a project, it's like, oh, I don't want to bug people. Bug people. Tell people. I mean, I was running around yesterday and I'm telling people, oh, yeah, I'm speaking tomorrow because I wanted people to come. And you guys are not psychic. Like, I ran into, you know, the schedule's up, but I ran into people that, like, I had some conversation about something I knew I was mentioning, and, oh, yeah, I'm kind of talking about that tomorrow. Oh, you're speaking? I didn't know. You know, people, I've had people tell me about shows, and they're like, oh, this is tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I wanted to go to that. I forgot it was tomorrow. So you're not bothering people, really. I mean, even people that are interested in what you're doing still, you know, maybe need a reminder. So promote yourselves, promote your friends. Like, if you can't get excited about your friends doing cool shit, then what is the point? I don't want to live in whatever sad world that is the case, that I can't get excited for my friends doing something cool. So a lot of like promoting and getting your work out there is kind of considering whose audience might also appreciate what you're doing. And it's not in a like, I'm gonna leash onto somebody's audience in like a smarmy kind of way, but like a lot of people kind of credit skate and surf videos for punk getting big. And it was like, it's an aggressive sport, so they need aggressive music. It went together kind of well. So you have an existing audience, which is these kids that are already watching skate and surf videos. And then you're introducing them to a new thing, and it's targeted. It's something that like they may have an interest in. So a lot of kids, you know, that don't live in city centers, like there's some kid in Kansas that heard Pennywise from a surf video, or like my friends found them through that Tony Hawk skate thing, had an excellent soundtrack for a video game. So, you know, you kind of consider like, all right, well, who might be into what I'm doing? And a great way that I found bands when I was a kid was compilation albums and splits. So some of you guys know these folks. The idea behind splits is basically that they're splitting a record. Like there's one band on one side of the record, one on the other. And speaking of my friends doing cool shit, this is amazing. The Signals Midwest and Worship this split. If you don't already own it, you totally should. It's very, very good. If you missed them yesterday, I'm sorry that you make really poor life choices. They were really good. So the point I was trying to make with this, I did have a point somewhere. The idea behind it is fans of Signals Midwest will buy it, and they'll hear Worship This. And fans of Worship This buy it, they hear Signals Midwest. So you're getting, your work in front of somebody new, but you know, they play shows together a lot, the crowd's generally into it, so there's a pretty good chance that if you're a fan of one of the bands, you'll probably be a fan of the other. So, you know, you have a good shot at kind of picking up new fans that way. And so you might say to yourself, I don't see how this possibly applies to me because designers don't make records. But they do make collaborative projects, like what Troy Shane is doing, which he's going to talk about after me, you should stick around for. Like Ferocious Quarterly, like Dan Casaro's 50/50 project, anything where an artist has an existing audience and is pulling in collaborators to like work on it too. So they're basically just saying that like, I thought these people were cool and maybe you will too. And obvious connections, a lot of times, like I said, you know, these guys are pretty, you know, they're similar, so you might like one or the other, but I'm always interested in like weird cross-promotion. I'm really into like people taking media that just has no business being together and doing it anyway and it works. It's a lot of fun. So we kind of had to do that out of necessity because our scene where I'm from is very, very small because I live in the boonies. So he's gonna be thrilled about this. My husband played in a punk band when I met him. And so I drug up these photos. He's like 17 or 18 of these. He's gonna be really, really excited. I dragged them out. But they played in like a, kind of like a hardcore punk band, but they had friends that were in like metal bands. They had a friend that was in like a funny pop punk band. They had like political crusher type bands. They had one that was like rap funk or something. I don't even know what you would call it. They were better than that. I'm giving them like they sound. And it wasn't like a conscious decision that the guys sat around and thought, well, we really need to widen our fan base, so what we're going to do is, you know, play these shows with these varying artists or whatever. It's just that they had friends that were in other bands, and they liked them, and why don't we play a show together? And even though there's not like a super obvious kind of thread that connects all of them, the kids were into it. Like, you didn't have that max exodus after one band that like, obviously everyone was here for them, and these guys, you know, everyone kind of stuck around, so they were sort of excited about it. Most of what I shoot when I'm doing photos is, I always say brides and bands because it's alliterative, and I like that. But I used to keep these just like entirely separate. My wedding stuff and my band stuff were just completely, because to me, like, I couldn't see any obvious connection between those two people. Why would they possibly care about this other stuff that I'm doing? I was wrong. There's actually a much larger overlap, more people than I thought. So, like, the couples that tended to book me for weddings were kind of into music, and a lot of them were into the same thing I was. And you might not think that that matters a whole lot, but when you're looking at strangers on the internet to hire somebody, like, some kind of common ground can be a deciding factor in whether you're going to get in touch with them, whether you're going to meet up with them, whether you're going to hire them. So it was kind of a big deal. And bands just didn't really care. Like, they didn't care that I shot weddings, but they weren't not hiring me because of it either. So, you know, they're kind of indifferent about it. But they also had friends, and sometimes your friends get married. So, like, because I allowed for the possibility that there might be some overlap there, I'm reaching a wider audience. So this sounds scary to some people. There are some arguments that I'm super tired of hearing. One of them being, you know, kids with giving their digital prints or digital photos instead of prints, and we used to make all of our money off of prints, and well, you used to, and now you don't, so what are you gonna do about that? And crying about it is not a viable business model. So I kind of feel like it's like if you were a phonograph salesman and you're just like railing against the iPod ruining the industry because it displaced your business model. It's non-productive at best. That's the nicest thing I can say about it. The nature of distribution has changed. It's still changing. It's probably going to keep changing for some time, and it can be a, you know, scary thing to people, or you can see it as a really liberating opportunity. You can be whatever you want to do. You don't have to wait for someone to give you a job or a client to hire you to do something that you think is great. You can just do it. The internet is a magical, wonderful thing these days. I mean, I can make a blog for free and put absolutely anything I want on it. I can put all my work up there, and there's not a gatekeeper. You don't have to like get permission to put something out into the world. And people that are willing to be clever, that are figuring out how to do more with less, that are working around obstacles, like those people are doing okay. Those people have always done okay. I love Joss Whedon a lot, so do I have any Joss Whedon nerds? I think I just like to hear people clapping. I just keep asking you questions that require applause. So one of the ideas that I kind of picked up from our punk scene was the idea of being prolific, although I don't think that's the word they would use. But my friends were in they're in a bunch of bands. Like a lot of them aren't in just one band. They do collaborate with each other. Maybe they're doing backing vocals on another album. This one plays guitar for these guys. They're doing a side project with half of this band and part of whatever. They're in a lot of projects. You can't be too precious about one project. Like, do a bunch. Do 100 projects. Do lots and lots of projects. Mikey Erg's in everybody's band. I think, I have joked that there's a law going around now that if you start a punk band, you have to ask Mikey Erg if he wants to be in it before you're allowed to move forward on that project. So be more like Mikey Erg, although maybe not like this. This was from In Subfest, and I kind of felt like maybe it would be better if I just didn't ask them what that was about. It's the dude from Rational Anthem, he got sleepy, I don't know what's happening. So, and I know you have limited time in a day that you want to spend like eating or sleeping or spending time with loved ones or whatever it is that you do. So, you can't do every cool project that you come across, but you can do a lot of them, and probably more than you think. And at the very, very least, just don't tie all your hopes to one project. I had a lot of cool projects that came out of personal work I was doing. I also had a lot of cool projects that came out of total failures of projects. So one of those is this little songbook. Anybody know these guys? Their tagline is something like, just because we're funny doesn't mean we're joking. So they're pretty cool. But so there's kind of like here's the long and winding road to how I ended up doing illustrations for this book. Last year, this guy named Tony asked me to do a festival poster for the festival he's throwing in London. It's a little 2-day thing. I hand wrote this whole deal, which is not a great idea when you have a quick turnaround on a festival because everything kept changing. I had to redo the dates, and then they moved the place and whatever, so not recommended. Anyway, one of the bands that's in the really big font there is Bobby Joe Ebola, which is the songbook thing. So, you know, that happened, whatever. A couple months later, I went to Baltimore and shot In Subfest, and they're playing at it. So I met the guys in, like, you know, it's not, they don't really have a backstage there, but like a corner or whatever. That was their backstage. And, you know, I was talking to them. I talked to Dan. I, you know, just went up and shook hands. Hey, that was really great. I loved your set. That was, you know, cool. And we started talking. We talked about the festival, and Dan says, oh, yeah, I saw that poster. That was really cool. So I told them, and him and Corbett, if they needed artwork, to look me up. And then a couple months go by again. So I think early this year they got back in touch with me about this cover for this book that they want to do. And it's like their lyrics and chords for a bunch of their songs. They're doing little illustrations, stories about touring, just little like odds and ends and bits and things. So they wanted me to do a cover for it, and they were meeting with the publisher in like 3 days or something. It was really like, we got to get this done. And my whole art direction for it was, can you draw me a rabbit smoking a cigarette? I tell people now, like, I draw nonsense for a living. The bar for the most ridiculous thing I've been asked to illustrate is so high right now. Like, I just invite anyone. But if you're in a band and you want a shirt of like a shark on a skateboard, like sword fighting a bear or something, I'm your girl. Like, I will make you that. So this is what we came up with, and Corbett loved it. It's great. Yeah, cool. We're gonna meet with the publisher. It's gonna be awesome. The publisher didn't like it, and they said we're gonna have someone else do the cover. And I'm sad, because, you know, I was excited about doing a book cover or whatever, but he felt super bad, and I said, you know, it's business, these things happen, stuff falls through, like, I hope you guys sell 1 million copies. Because they're nice dudes, and I like to see nice people do well, so buy it. I'm sorry, I had a shameless plug stuck in my throat, so I had to shamelessly plug that. Sorry. So a couple months later, Corbett gets in touch with me again. He's like, you know, I know that cover thing fell through, but we'd really love for you to do interior illustrations for it. I think this is probably the least ridiculous one they asked me to draw, so I went with that. And they, yeah, so they asked me to participate. So now, like, I went from making this random poster for a festival in London to doing illustrations in a book with, like, Winston Smith and Mitch Clem and Jason Chandler from Horrible Comics, and all these people that are just, like, way more talented than me, and somehow I snuck into being in this book. So I'm really excited about it. The thing, and you never know who's going to see your work. So it's kind of a long story as to how I got that gig. And what I learned was bands that were making stuff happen, it took a lot of work to make that stuff happen. And when you see just the end part of it, you think, oh, God, you're so lucky. But they've, like, been working their asses off this whole time. And a lot of times people will compare where they're at in their career now with someone that's, like, 10, 20 years down the road from where they are. So, like, take the Ramones. And so even if you're not into the genre, like, you probably heard of these dudes, seen the logos. You probably heard some really bad covers of Blitzkrieg Bop in your day. And the reaction is like, oh, well, it's easy for them. They're the Ramones. But they used to just be some dudes playing in basements for no money. there's not like, they didn't wake up and were like, we shall be a very famous band today. And there's not a governing body that awards you a fan base. Like, you have to go out and get that. They didn't just show up and have it. So you want to like embrace where you are in your particular career. If you follow the Commonwealth Press guys, and you should, because they tweet cool stuff. Yeah, yay! I love those guys. They make all of my ridiculous t-shirts, and they never look at me weird for the ridiculous stuff I'm asking them to print. So God bless them. This is not a thing that like Microsoft can do. Like, first guy to bring Bill Gates a sandwich gets a copy of Windows 8. You can't do that when you're Microsoft. But you can when you're small. Like, I have friends in bands that are getting away with things they could not possibly get away with if they were like a huge touring band with like buses and managers and bodyguards and things. Like, you couldn't do this stuff. So you want to, and you may not always be small, so you want to take advantage of the things that you can do and build a reputation with your customers that way. And eventually, work begets work. Yeah, you heard me. I said begets. Here's another, this is a non-business perk to being in punk rock. I credit like most of my verbal SAT scores with listening to Bad Religion. So if you want to expand your vocabulary, just Bad Religion's great for it. Thanks to them. So, it feels like when you start, like you're pushing a boulder up a mountain, and you're putting so much work into it, and you're just like fighting for every inch of headway, and you're getting nothing back. And then eventually it kind of tips, and maybe people start seeing things you do. Maybe they see a second and a third thing, and sometimes it takes a while, but maybe they hire you, and then they start telling your friends, and then you have this thing that kind of has its own momentum going that you don't have to put so much of your like blood, sweat, and tears into to keep it moving. So to get your work out there, sometimes you kind of have to be a little clever. And punk rock kids are really creative about making spaces for themselves. They will play anywhere that they can physically fit people. And so I went to a lot of shows that are in basements and garages, but some of them were even weirder places than that. That's a Taco Bell. Oh yeah. My friends wanted to put on this show. They wanted to have like a day-long Battle of the Bands kind of like festival thing. People would vote, and it'd be, But I live in Brownsville. We have nothing. And in Uniontown, we had like a little basement venue, but it's not the kind of thing that you can put like, 15, 18 bands and kids all day and whatever. So we had no venue for it, which again is a pretty big stumbling block to having a show that you have nowhere to be. Come on, Pages. So I still don't know how he got this okayed. It's a mystery to me, but one of my friends worked at the Taco Bell in Uniontown, and he asked them, and they said, yeah, you can do it in the parking lot. Of the Taco Bell. And they set up like a flatbed truck kind of thing, and they had, bands, and he did flyers, he set up the voting, like, he really did this little, like, festival in the parking lot. It was insane. And they still had the drive-thru open, so these poor people were pulling around, like, shouting their orders over terrible grindcore bands, and, like, they just wanted a burrito. Like, I don't want to listen to this. But it actually went so well that they let him do it again the next year. They were like, yeah, you can do it. That went great. And there are kids everywhere just loitering and, like, climbing up the hill to the Walmart and just being generally intrusive and terrible. But so before you think, like, you can't ask someone for that crazy thing you want, is it weirder than throwing a concert in the parking lot of a Taco Bell? Because it's probably not, and it never hurts to ask. It's a little bit of working outside the system. Like, does a show have to be in a club? Does art have to be in a gallery? I'm going to drag Commonwealth Press into this again since you guys like them so much. Yeah. They put on a t-shirt show in their warehouse. They just hung up clothesline, and designers brought up t-shirts they made, and they clothespinned them. Like, boom, gallery. Art. You can do it anywhere you want. So I promised Juggalos, and I'm gonna deliver on that. I know they're not really a punk band. I'm not gonna argue like who is and isn't punk because I think it's the most like boring thing I could possibly talk about. Thank you. Yes, so boring. But these guys are suing the FBI. Like, that's pretty friggin' punk rock. That's another real thing that is happening that I did not make up. So why in the world am I talking about Insane Clown Posse? These guys know their audience. I know they don't even know how magnets work, but they're like marketing geniuses. And you might think that their band is terrible and ridiculous and stupid and like the worst thing you've ever heard of, and I'm kind of hard-pressed actually, like maybe Flippers worse, I don't know. There's not a lot. But you know who doesn't care that you think they're terrible? These dudes. Actually, that's a Saturday Night Live skit. It's these dudes. Sorry. We had a local band called the Sarcastics, and they had this song that went like, we don't care if your mother likes us, we don't care if your brother likes us, whatever. And they don't, and they shouldn't. Like, they're not for your mom. They're not for everybody, and these clowns totally get that. The thing is, if your target demographic is everybody, you're doing it wrong, and should probably also look up what target means, because it's a little smaller. The thing is, like, these guys don't just have people who are like, oh, yeah, St. Papa's okay, I like them. They have rabid, loyal fans that, like, I mean, they get grown adults to wear clown makeup and Jinko jorts and spray Faygo Pop at each other. Like, that's how much people love this band. They love them. And some people will think that your work is terrible and stupid, and these are not your people. You don't need to care about them. You can't cater to every single demographic. So what you need to do is find your juggalos. Not literal juggalos, guys, like your personal. You know, you find those people that love what you do. They'll come to their shows, they buy your prints, like they'll tell their friends that they think you're great. Find those people and get your work in front of them. And so I had a little bit of trouble with this when I started doing wedding photography in the first place. I read a lot of major wedding blogs. You want to see like what other people are doing in your industry. So I did that, and they all kind of like had a really similar tone. It's very like gushy, very flowers and rainbows, and maybe you've noticed that's not really how I talk. I say shit a lot. It's not so much, you know, flowers and rainbows. They say things like "I-gasm." I've never said in my life till just now. Like, I have no business typing amazeballs. I don't even know what that means. But I thought that, like, that's what wedding photographers are supposed to sound like, I guess. So when I started my business, my blog posts and my policy pages and everything was written that way. It was written the way that I thought a wedding photographer was supposed to sound, and not written like me. And I did okay. I mean, I did bad. I had some like really great clients, and I had some okay clients, and I had some that were not a great fit for either of us. I mean, you know, me or them. And I felt like I was being really disingenuous. And the thing is, one of the big things that I tell people when I meet them is that, like, you need to find a photographer that you get along with, because, like, if you think your florist is a jerk, you can just pick up your flowers and you don't have to see that dude ever again. But me, you're stuck with for like 12 hours. So if we don't get along, you know, so I'm telling people this, you need to find someone that, you know, you kind of click with, and nothing that I had on my website was helping them do this. So they'd set up a meeting, and I would show up. And maybe I'm not what they're expecting, and that's completely on me, because I was not helping them do that. So I dropped all of it. And I started, like, I rewrote all my policy pages, and I rewrote my blog posts, and I started writing, like, authentically the way that I would write. So that's what I learned from Insane Clown Posse, is to be authentically you, even if, like, you're kind of weird and mouthy and swear too much. Like, you do you. And the thing is, I'm not flowery about it, but I love shooting weddings. I get the coolest people, and they're gonna go be like a little cool family together, like, come on, I love it. And I read somewhere that if you wanna do something that sticks with people, to do something that sticks with you. Because the thing is that part of your job, no matter what you do, is to convince people to hire you to do that thing. You want them to book your band, or publish your novel, or do your logo, or whatever, and this is known as hustlin', you may have heard. Authenticity matters even to people in clown makeup. That's what I learned.